Imagine a tank so advanced, so revolutionary that it could completely rewrite the rules of armored combat. This is no ordinary machine. This is the T-14 Armata, Russia's most ambitious leap forward, built to outmatch anything rolling across contested ground today. It's loaded with systems never deployed before. What makes it so different? Why are defense planners from every major power studying it closely? And could its arrival signal the beginning of a new era in how wars are fought? In this video, we're pulling back the curtain on the T-14 Armata, its design, its firepower, and whether it truly represents the future of warfare on the battlefield. Stay with us, because by the end, we'll show exactly what makes this machine not just different, but a potential turning point in modern armored combat. May 9th, 2015, Red Square, Moscow. The world watches as something entirely unfamiliar rolls past the Kremlin walls during Russia's Victory Day parade. The T-14 Armata. Military analysts from Washington to Beijing lean forward because this tank looks nothing like anything that came before it. Not another upgraded T-90, not a modified T-72 wearing fresh paint. This is built on the Armata Universal Combat Platform by Uralvagonzavod, Russia's first completely new main battle tank design in over 3 decades. And here's what makes this different. The Armata platform isn't just one vehicle, it's an entire family. Heavy infantry carriers, self-propelled artillery, and engineering vehicles, all built on the same chassis, sharing parts, logistics, and training. As a result, Russia isn't just introducing a new tank, it's rebuilding its entire armored doctrine from the ground up. The T-14 sits at the center of that vision, and every feature on this machine points toward one question. Is this what the future of armored warfare looks like? First, let's talk about how the T-14 keeps its crew alive, because this is where it breaks every rule. Traditional tank design puts the commander, gunner, and loader inside the turret, right next to the ammunition, right where the main gun operates. When an anti-tank round punches through, the crew has maybe seconds before the turret becomes a fireball. Ammunition cooks off, the turret blows, the crew doesn't survive. The T-14 Armata completely abandons this layout. All 3 crew members sit in a heavily armored capsule in the front hull, separated from the turret by thick protective walls. The turret operates unmanned. No one sits near the gun. No one sits near the ammunition. Consequently, if enemy fire destroys the turret completely, the crew remains sealed inside their compartment, isolated from the blast, from the fire, from catastrophic penetration. In fact, Western tanks like the M1 Abrams still put crews in the turret. Soviet designs like the T-72 and T-90 do the same. The T-14 says that era is over. In modern combat, where guided missiles strike from miles away, where top attack munitions rain down from drones, crew survivability isn't optional anymore, it's mandatory. Therefore, the armored capsule becomes the T-14's answer to that problem, forcing every other nation to ask if their tank crews are protected enough. But survivability is just the beginning. Now let's talk about how this tank kills. The T-14 mounts a 125mm 2 A82-1M smoothbore cannon, one of the most advanced tank guns Russia has ever produced. This isn't the older 2 A46 used in the T-90. This gun handles higher pressures, fires at longer ranges, and hits with better accuracy. An autoloader feeds shells automatically from a carousel below the turret. No manual loading, faster firing cycles, lower crew workload. But here's where it gets interesting. The 2A82-1M doesn't just fire standard shells. It fires anti-tank guided missiles directly through the barrel. These missiles give the T-14 reach that conventional tank rounds can't match. Take this scenario. A T-14 sitting hull down 2 miles from the battlefield can lock onto an enemy tank, fire a missile, watch it arc through the air, and strike from above where armor is thinnest. The enemy never gets close enough for a direct shot. The engagement ends before it starts. As a result, this dual capability, shells and missiles, transforms the T-14 from a direct fire platform into something more flexible, something that can control larger areas of the battlefield, something that engages from standoff distances where survival rates climb and exposure drops. What's more, with that autoloader running, the gun never stops feeding. To support that firepower, the T-14 has something most tanks don't, an active protection system called Afghanit. When an enemy missile screams toward the tank, sensors detect it instantly. Radar tracks its path. Computers calculate where it's going. Then, in milliseconds, Afghanit launches countermeasures, small interceptors or directed charges that detonate near the incoming threat, destroying it in midair before it ever reaches the armor. This isn't reactive armor that explodes after being hit. This is active defense. The tank fights back against the missile itself. Modern anti-tank weapons are devastatingly powerful. Top attack profiles, tandem warheads, and thermobaric charges designed to crack through the thickest armor. No tank can rely on armor thickness alone anymore. Despite that, if the tank can destroy the threat before impact, armor becomes a backup layer instead of the only layer. Afghanit creates defense in depth. First, the system tries to intercept. If that fails, explosive reactive armor detonates. If that fails, composite armor absorbs the hit. If that fails, the crew sits protected in their isolated capsule. Multiple barriers exist between the threat and the humans inside. Consequently, that's what keeps the T-14 operating in environments where older tanks would be burning wrecks within minutes. Let's not forget about detection. The T-14 doesn't rely on human eyesight. The commander and gunner sit in their capsule with no windows, no direct view of the battlefield. Instead, they watch high-resolution screens fed by external cameras, thermal imagers, and digital sights covering every angle around the tank. Thermal vision cuts through smoke, fog, and darkness. Digital zoom pulls distant targets into sharp focus. And mounted on the turret sits a phased array radar system that tracks multiple contacts simultaneously. Enemy tanks, infantry vehicles, low-flying helicopters, even incoming projectiles. All monitored in real time, all fed to the crew faster than human eyes could ever process. In the same way, traditional tanks use optical sights and maybe a laser rangefinder. The T-14 operates like a fighter jet's fire control system adapted for ground combat. It spots first, locks first, fires first. In engagements where seconds decide everything, that sensor advantage determines who drives away and who burns. Not only that, these digital sensors can link together. Multiple T-14s share target data across the platoon. One tank sees a threat, every tank knows about it instantly. This kind of networked warfare has been standard in aircraft for years, but almost non-existent in ground vehicles. Therefore, the T-14 brings it to armored combat, turning individual tanks into nodes in a connected system where the whole formation sees more, reacts faster, and hits harder than any single vehicle could alone. In terms of mobility, the T-14 doesn't disappoint either. It's powered by a 12N360 diesel engine, also called the A85-3A, producing up to 1,500 horsepower, pushing a vehicle weighing between 48 and 55 tons, depending on loadout. That engine delivers a top speed of around 80 kilometers per hour on roads. Older Soviet tanks like the T-72 top out near 60 kilometers per hour. The T-14 moves faster, repositions quicker, and flanks more aggressively. Speed means options. Withdraw from a bad position before encirclement. Maneuver into firing positions before the enemy reacts. Control the pace of the engagement. But raw speed isn't the whole story. The T-14 uses a hydropneumatic suspension system that adjusts ride height and absorbs shocks from rough terrain. As a result, this keeps the gun stable even while moving fast over broken ground. A stable gun means accurate shots on the move. Older tanks had to stop, stabilize, then fire. The T-14 fires while rolling, harder to hit, able to strike back without stopping. Consequently, mobility becomes more than just transportation. It becomes control over engagement range, control over when contact happens, control over the terms of the fight itself, and that control is what keeps the T-14 dictating the battle instead of reacting to it. The T-14's design is also worth noting because it does something unusual for a tank. It reduces the radar signature. The angular, low-profile turret, the flat-sloped surfaces, all designed to deflect radar waves instead of bouncing them straight back to the emitter. The same stealth principles used in aircraft are applied to a ground vehicle. Modern militaries rely on radar to locate and target ground forces. Artillery radar, counter-battery systems, and some guided munitions all depend on radar returns. A smaller signature means harder detection, slower tracking, and reduced targeting accuracy. The T-14 won't turn invisible, but it sits quieter on the electromagnetic spectrum than older designs. And tactically, that creates an advantage in the opening moments of contact. If enemy sensors struggle to find the tank, the T-14 chooses when to reveal itself, when to open fire, and when to engage. In fact, in tank combat, where the first shot often decides everything, that extra second of invisibility can mean the difference between survival and destruction. Another fascinating feature of the T-14 is its potential for unmanned operation. The crew already sits separated from the turret. The turret already operates without humans inside. The systems already run digitally. This design makes future autonomous variants possible. Russian military sources and defense analysts have discussed plans for versions with reduced crews or even fully unmanned operation relying on artificial intelligence and remote control. If that happens, tank warfare changes completely. Unmanned vehicles take risks that crewed platforms never could. Advance through minefields without hesitation. Hold positions under sustained fire without worrying about casualties. Deploy in numbers that would be politically impossible if every tank needed 3 soldiers inside. This capability isn't confirmed for deployment yet, but the architecture is there. Meanwhile, other nations are watching this closely. China develops unmanned ground vehicles. The United States experiments with robotic combat systems. Whether Russia fully develops this or not, the conversation has started, and the T-14 Armada represents a step toward that future. A platform built in ways that make removing the crew technically achievable. The T-14 Armada isn't just a tank. It's a loud announcement that the age of slow, heavy, old-school armor is over, replaced by machines that think faster, see farther, and protect their crews like a moving fortress. Every part of this vehicle, from the sealed crew capsule to the cannon that fires missiles to the defense system that swats incoming threats out of the sky, shows a future where survival depends on being smart, connected, and nearly impossible to hit. Even if the T-14 never rolls out in huge numbers, every major military power is already studying it, copying it, and rewriting their playbooks because the classic tank design we knew for decades is fading away, replaced by something sharper and much more advanced. And honestly, it's wild watching the entire world react to one machine, shifting the rules of modern warfare.